I couldn't talk about this episode without bringing in my animation specialist. I'm a bit predictable, I know, but I'm brought with me Five Who Fans member and also professional animator as well, John Granston. How you doing, John?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me.
No, well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us, and you've redecorated as well. You are living in an animated world.
I am in an animated TARDIS of sorts, yeah. I thought, if the episode's about a cartoon character coming into the real world, I'll sit in a fictional animated TARDIS and go from there.
It's so strange how last season we saw a live action Shauka Doctor head, but we had no Shauka animated Doctor this season. I feel like they've missed a trick there.
Not yet.
Oh yeah, there is time. There's still 6 episodes.
There's still plenty of time to do other strange meta things with the show.
Yeah, and this was a very, very meta episode. So I think we'll kind of maybe rip the band-aid off here. John, I want to know, did you have like any expectations going into this as my animator friend, basically? Because I knew that you were very excited conceptually when they dropped Mr. Ring-a-Ding in the trailer, when he comes out of the big screen. What were your expectations, and were they met?
So yeah, I've still not seen Joy to the World, I should say, as my first thing. But I didn't watch on Christmas Day, and then someone sent me the trailer going, "What do you think of that shot, John?" And I was like, "What?" And yeah, so I see in the trailer this shot of a cartoon character coming out the screen, and I'm like, "You have my interest. I will be watching." And the Robot Revolution last week, kind of take it or leave it for me. And then throughout this week, I've just kind of been going, well, this week is the one that's either going to be an all-time classic or kind of going to fumble a really fun concept. It's doing things I wasn't expecting. I've got so many notes, and I've just written, for an episode that finally does what I've wanted the show to do all my life, I'm sad that the full extent of animated Doctor Who wasn't realised, and the show takes a turn into being emphatically a TV show rather than a love letter, an exploration of the medium of animation.
Okay.
That being said, it's not the worst meta-narrative the show could have taken, and potentially lays the groundwork for an incredibly ambitious deconstruction of the show.
Mm-hmm. So you think that's the direction we're heading in with like the Reality War finale and maybe Mrs. Flood?
Maybe Mrs. Flood. Okay, so you were mentioning earlier, like, there are the pretty... Not, I don't, yeah, the industry chatter around the show right now isn't glowing.
Let's say mixed messages.
Mixed messages. It is very mixed.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting. It's mixed. And again, I don't want to be responsible for coming in going secret good fourth episode. Also bringing back
Sherlock. Yeah.
But I've got I was watching the episode, and the first 25 minutes I was just sitting there and I was going, he's nailed this. And the animation I was in awe of. And then the event happens at 30 minutes. The show goes super meta.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah.
And then they talk about how they knew this was going to happen because some of this stuff leaked. And I realized in that moment that the day before I had seen something about cast members being Doctor Who fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were credited as Doctor Who fans. And there had been a story in the week about how Murray Gold reused music in the episode.
Mm.
And I was like, that is weird. I just realized that he did. He's reusing a bit of Series 5 music right now in the scene. That's strange. And then you get to Mrs. Flood at the end, and she says, limited run. Story ends May the 24th.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but sit up and go, sorry?
Yeah.
Is this either... Well, because it's an episode about the show and being meta, and it's like, is this just kind of cosmically coincidental that we're in this situation, and then the show is also sort of dealing with that? Or is there something actually happening where, for some reason, Russell has gone insane and decided to hype up the show by saying it's being cancelled?
Yeah.
And is it actually part of the meta narrative of the show and who Mrs. Flood is?
Yeah. It turns out that we heard that Shooter Gatwa was doing a play with the Royal Shakespeare Company later in the year. It turns out that's a front. It turns out Mrs. Flood is starring in it.
She's starring in it, and it's a massive, like, can you imagine? I mean, again, like I say, it is crazy. It is a crazy conspiracy theory. It is my secret not getting cancelled theory.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I say, 99% of me is kind of more like, nah, that's just unfortunate but kind of fascinating coincidence.
Yeah.
But there's just that one part of my Doctor Who brain that is going, oh, but that would be something, wouldn't it? Because like, it's not impossible to have Disney Plus just not announce the sequel, like to not announce the plans moving forward. You look at shows like recently, the end of season 2 of Severance, they didn't announce its recommission until after the end of season 2 of Severance. You know, that's a kind of common thing to do.
Yeah. I think the idea is that you use, if you are like wanting to maybe recommission something, you do it afterwards so that you get that, the momentum. They keep watching it because, oh, this could be recommissioned, let's watch the thing. It's an extension of the news cycle. Whereas, but that can work both ways. You don't want to announce something's getting cancelled because then no one wants to watch it when it's currently live and new. So yeah, mixed messages is a weird one as well. But I think there's also, like, in the giggle, Russell kind of framed the invention of the television as this like chaotic force that divides people and drives them crazy. But then he frames film stock or like animation, not sure, like as like the atom bomb. Like it's the, just like light is this devastating force with the atom bomb, it also can bring people together, like fans. It feels like maybe the metaphor's getting very stretched there.
The metaphor is kind of all over the place. Like, I did write this down, and I'm sure you and your fans will have an interesting reaction to this statement. But Lux is, strangely, a sequel, or at least like an extended kind of commentary on what was laid out in Love and Monsters.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because Love and Monsters is an episode which is about fans' encounters with the Doctor, generating a community of people who come together, love to talk about the Doctor, but then their lives grow beyond that.
Yeah.
Like in my situation, you know, Five Who fans. Last year I went to 2 separate Five Who fan weddings.
Yeah.
You know, our lives have grown beyond that association, which is wonderful. And this episode is kind of a deconstruction of how Doctor Who needs its fans and the fans need Doctor Who, at least in part. Like that section is a strange conversation. And it's weird to me because I just finished last week that new Doctor Who book, Exterminate, Regenerate.
Oh, I've been meaning to read that.
Okay, so I won't go too much into it, but there's a very interesting kind of hypothesis that John Higgs keeps bringing up throughout the book, which is that Doctor Who itself is like almost like a living entity, and it's about how it is a show which to reflect the world that it's in and to bring itself back and to change, and it creates conditions around, like it's a very fast, it's obviously it's kind of a bit whimsical thinking, but it's like quite interesting that I finished that whole thought cycle was in my head, and then this episode happens where it seems to directly continue that thought process. Like it's Doctor Who is like a living meta thing with a parasocial relationship with its fans and reality itself. And this is crazy. We're talking about this, and this episode was meant to be the animated episode for me. This is the episode. Which your initial question was, did it live up to my expectations? And no.
Okay.
Although it kind of did. Like Lux himself, I think is wonderful, and I think like on the animation standpoint, like absolutely beautiful character animation throughout this. There are a couple of shots that I've already gone back and watched frame by frame, just being like, how did you do that? That's world-class animation. And I know we were talking earlier today, just briefly, but like I looked into some of the things behind the scenes. There is one animator, as mentioned on Unleashed, who worked on Roger Rabbit, who is working on Lux. And for those who don't know, Roger Rabbit was animated in the UK. So there's a generation of animators who got their big break in the late 80s working on Roger Rabbit, and they developed extremely fantastically high quality skills. And then they don't get to work on any of that stuff again.
Yeah.
Like it barely happens in the UK, so it's really nice to know at least one animator got to flex those skills once more and on an episode of Doctor Who, which gonna be memorable. Like this is a memorable episode either way.
Because it's not just animation. I say just in quotes, but it's the incorporation of giving it a sense of place in a live action space. There's the promo clip that they released a few days before, where it's when they first meet Lux and he's on that stage, and there's a great shot behind Lux as Belinda's stepping onto the stage, going like, "What, why you got a pig nose?" And the camera is slightly wobbling because it's like a handheld camera, but Lux as well, like still moves in the frame to compensate for that. It's these tiny little details that give him a sense of place, even though on set it was just a green pole.
Green pole and a cutout. There's a phrase that they developed on Roger Rabbit called "bumping the lamp."
Oh, okay.
In that, there's a shot where Bob Hoskins is like holding on to Roger, and he accidentally knocks a lamp, which causes the lamp to go swinging. And they chose to use that take because it's dynamic and the lighting's great. Then the problem is they had in like animating it and lighting it and compositing it with the technology of like 1988.
Yeah.
Was how do you make that work? And they just kind of, that team of animators led by Richard Williams, who wrote essentially the animation Bible called the Animator Survival Kit. You actually see it in all of the desks and the behind the scenes of the animators. They've all got the Animator Survival Kit.
Okay.
And he kind of like helped them develop the technology for bumping the lamp. And it's something that I'm also quite familiar with because my first job as a professional animator was on Little Roy, which is a preschool show. But the main kind of premise is that it's about a cartoon boy who lives in the real world and he interacts with the real world. And they built a special set of a house which had like magnets and automatic doors and stuff. So we would have footage of just a ghost walking through a building, and then we'd animate the character moving through it, and you'd make him bump the lamp. So that shot of like, there's that shot as well when the Doctor steps on stage and Belinda comes on and the camera's rotating as well. With modern technology, it is easier to track in that character, but there is still a lovely attention to detail there. There's the shot when he's climbing up the stairs going, "Oh, I should never have learnt perspective," which is a great joke on many levels.
Yeah.
Like, for an animator, there's a joke there. For the audience, there's lots. And it also answers the question as to why isn't he anymore.
Yeah.
And it is this kind of, it's this tracking shot and he's perfectly in there. Then there's the shot where he goes, "The greatest story ever told," and jumps off screen. Beautiful. There's a shot where he comes under the door and then he goes, "Mr. Pye, are you telling my secrets? Because fire's flammable to film," or whatever it is. And then he does like it's called a double bounce, where when a character walks, they kind of do a da 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 da. It's expertly done. Like,
yeah.
For me to finally see animation of that quality associated with Doctor Who,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, there it is. Yes, yum yum. I could eat this for days.
Yeah. And I also, there's the great detail as well how Doctor Who is shot on digital. And Lux is animated via digital means, like, unless they literally did use cells on every frame. I doubt they did that. No. But he still has film grain on him. So he contrasts in multiple ways with the digital 3-dimensional world around him, and I think that's a lovely detail as well. Even when the Doctor and Belinda are in the film stock, they get green as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's again, like the post processing on Lux is. I was looking quite intently at Unleashed, at the sequence where they are at Framestore. A couple of weeks ago, Russell mentioned that it was Framestore who kind of tackled this episode, and it looks like they animated all of the sections in Photoshop. They used a Cintiq, which you won't be able to see, but I have one right here. Like,
well,
this is the pen I use every day.
Last time you were on stream to talk Village of the Angels, I think you showed it, and it was like desk sized.
Yes, it's the same one. It's just moved to a different country with me now. But like, yeah, that's the tool I have, and it's what I use every day. And so again, it was like nice seeing that. But yeah, they use Photoshop and After Effects by the looks of it. Which again is similar to processes that I've worked on. Again, I mentioned this to you earlier, but I'm sad that none of the animators were listed in the credits. It's a small thing, but like during the 60th, in the credit sequence at the end, they made room for the VFX houses and all of the teams that worked on it, which was really nice. And I assume they didn't have time to put it into the credits because of the additional fourth wall break that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that's a shame. Again, so
yeah, hopefully the home media release maybe amends it. It's iPlayer as well, so they could always maybe re-upload it. I don't know.
Yeah, and Disney Plus, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that the first 20 minutes, I love the first 20 minutes of the episode. The cold open's great. I love Sunshine Sally in the background of Lux like side eyeing, going, "What the hell's going on? This is not the script."
What's he doing? There's also a bit when Luck starts singing the Ring a Ding song, and he does it a second time, and the Doctor says cut. In the background, he's out of focus, but if you look at him, he's filed. He does a little bit of a take.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuff's great, and I can see why Russell decided that this is an episode to explore being meta. But at the same time, the promise of the episode for me, and this is where it's like, okay, I now have to take the episode on its own terms. I can't. Now I know what the episode wants to do and did do. I can't be angry that it didn't do what I was hoping it would do.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I was hoping it would do is the Doctor and Belinda would be pulled into this cartoon world, and then they would go through different styles of animation and kind of follow through this kind of love letter to the medium, because Lux himself is this 1930s Fleischer-esque character, Mr. Ring-a-Ding, not Lux. And then they're pulled into this animated world, which is very Hanna-Barbera, Scooby-Doo, obviously being the main through line. Just to be a Doctor Who fan about it, it's anachronistic to have animation like that in the early 1950s.
Yeah.
Hanna-Barbera wasn't established until 1957, and animation at the cinema was designed to be beautiful. That's why early shorts of Tom and Jerry and the Looney Tunes and everything are like the Mr. Ring-a-Ding short. They're just kind of the beautiful hundreds of thousands of dollars, 10-minute thing to put in the theater. When animation moved to television, they were like, well, make it cheap.
Yeah.
Make it fast. And that's how Hanna-Barbera happened.
Yeah, it's why all the characters have like collars or like things on their necks so that they could. It's a really good animation shortcut for TV.
Hide that, and because the fun thing about it is you can see how those characters are constructed. It does make me laugh now, though.
Don't make me laugh.
Don't make me laugh.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
But like, it's kind of funny to me that the Doctor has been animated in multiple forms now. We've had Scream of the Shauka, the Infinite Quest, and obviously the reconstructions, and now the 15th Doctor. They are all similar in being limited animation styles for the Doctor.
Yeah.
They don't seem to want to animate the Doctor in anything that pushes the boundary, like Lux or Mr. Ring-a-Ding. Like the character of the Doctor must always be animated in a limited way for some reason.
He's got a
seems to be
two-dimensional brain, you know.
he's got a two-dimensional brain. Um, so yeah, like I say, I was kind of hoping after that sequence would move into like some other animation styles and maybe move, and we do get there actually. We get like this Mr. Ring-a-Ding becoming 3D, and to begin with, he looks a little ugly, but is fine in 3D, and then he turns hideous.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great image and hopefully a subtle commentary on like why bother making these live action remakes? The originals look great.
Yeah, well, because like I don't know what the technical term, specific term for it is, but when he starts being 3D, he's like all light blue. He's not textured. It's like
Yes.
it's the basic like render model, and then he starts getting more detail, and then he becomes hideous. It's sort of like we've seen those like Photoshop edits of a realistic Simpsons family, or like realistic like Peter Griffin, and he does look a bit like that. Yeah, like the original Sonic the Hedgehog with his human teeth and human hands.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot he didn't have gloves. Yeah, it's hideous, but I feel I'm glad they did it, and I'm also like imagining kids watching that kind of that's an image that would sit with you. I don't know if it would make you scared, but it would definitely like leave you kind of like that. I didn't like the way he looked like that. I did not like that.
Yeah, especially when he's in the sun. And he's like, oh yeah, he looks a bit like me when I've not had enough sleep and I open the curtains. Like I felt a bit called out there. I'm a Doctor Who fan who also doesn't like to go outside. Speaking of Doctor Who fans, we've got Stu Bagfull in the chat. It says,
Oh.
yes, but John, wouldn't it be better if they put Instagram filters over him?
That's a different commentary, and I don't think we could add yet another commentary to this episode.
Hey,
without narrative cohesion breaking down.
How about we Ghibliify looks? How about that? Oh,
animation was a mistake.
Burn it down. Burn it all down.
Burn it down.
But yeah, and I think if you want to view this episode as a meta commentary, it's interesting that the Scooby-Doo parallel as well. How he's Velma. He calls Belinda Fred as well, which is that's Doctor, that Scooby-Doo is not a thing for 15 more years, you know.
Because they could have done that,
yeah. But yeah, so like how it exists and the formula exists in the context of the Doctor Who universe as well. Like how there's the film Alien exists in the Doctor Who universe, Bridgerton exists in the Doctor Who universe, and all the random cast members turning up who are very confusing. But yes, and how Belinda knows that the Doctor wants to go in because it's literally a haunted theatre with a caretaker. It's even before Lux turn or like the Doctor meets Mr. Ring-a-Ding, it feels like they're already poking or prodding at the meta narrative of it.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I think there's nothing wrong with it being a simple episode like that, which is. Unfortunately, that's the thing for some reason about this era so far. I say unfortunately, we don't know how it's going to play out. But for me, the thing that kind of when Russell T Davies was coming back, when it was announced coming back, I was really excited for RTD2 to be more Doctor Who by RTD with the 15 years experience, or 12 years experience he'd learned in between. Instead, his approach to writing it weirdly feels like we're now watching RTD writing what he thinks Stephen Moffat might do with some of these ideas.
Yeah. It feels like I think Darren Mooney, who is a much smarter Doctor Who commentator than I am, but he writes regular blogs, and he was talking about how clearly Russell T Davies has watched the show while he was away. He's kept up to date with it, which is how we get the Timeless Child in Wild Blue Yonder, but also the timey-wimey elements and the inspiration he's taken from Moffat. And you mentioned the music cues in the fan scene from Series 5, and it's the sad man in the box when he's saying goodbye to the fans. And my reference to that is when he's talking to Amy Pond in The Big Bang, who they're also reminiscing on his nature as a story to be told, as a character. So it's not just they're not just taking the music, they're taking the premise, like the emotional premise of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a bit strange.
It also, this is meant to be a relaunch for an international audience. The show is skewed younger on purpose to bring in younger kids. Those Doctor Who fans, there's not a child amongst them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've said it before. It feels like, especially with Empire of Death, that Russell is making the show for 10-year-olds who've been watching Doctor Who for 50 years, and that's the contradiction at the heart of it.
Yes,
Which is, I don't think that, because they made these series back to back, I think Lux was filming as series 1 was being broadcast. Or around that time, they can't.
Before, I think.
Yeah, they can't take the feedback or anything on board, which is always risky. That's part of it. But yeah, so I'm not sure if the approach changes for season 2 when it comes to, let's make a show, skew it younger. We've got big robots in the opener, but then in the second episode, let's have these adult fans who are watching the show. One of them's got a K9 mug, which I don't know if that's a legal thing they can do. Let's not ask about the K9 royalties.
The iconography exists. The promotions for the Christmas special I didn't watch had loads of Doctor Who merch in them, and merch that wasn't actually Doctor Who merch.
Yeah. Well, Robin in the episode is wearing a Beep the Meep shirt. I don't like how fictional fans get better T-shirts than the actual fans.
Maybe they were hoping by now there would be an influx of that type of material.
I'm still waiting for the Dalek backpack from Resolution when the squid is like on Lynn's back. I'm still waiting for that. Yes. I've got the schematics, BBC. I've got the prototype. It's sticky.
Like, I'm gonna just move on.
Please do. Please save me.
Like, the thing is about meta narratives in TV shows and films and everything, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them. I love games like the Stanley Parable, Oxen 3. I've spent the last week playing Thronglets. So like, I love a meta game. I don't know if it works so well in a TV show or film. I feel like if it deconstructs it, it works. But if you do meta, it doesn't, because I'm still aware. I'm now not the fourth wall, I'm the fifth wall. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas in a video game, I am controlling Stanley going down the wrong corridors and having that experience with the narrator. And like, I disliked Red Dwarf Back to Earth for it was the first time in like over a decade Red Dwarf was coming back, and at the end of the first episode they get pulled into the real world and it stops being funny and kind of just is a very strange quasi exploration between Red Dwarf and its fan, which Lux feels like. That scene with the fans feels more like Red Dwarf Back to Earth than Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest is a very strange pull, in my opinion, because it's not that.
Yeah.
It's not a bunch of aliens going, oh, we think Doctor Who is real, because the Doctor is an alien. Like, it doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, it's in the same category as Rogue when the Doctor says that it's cosplay. Well, no, it's LARPing. It's not cosplaying. It's when the fan Lizzie, I think her name is, mentions Galaxy Quest. She's like, no, it's not like Galaxy Quest. What are you on about? It's more like Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. I've not seen that film for a long time. I could be completely off base with that. But yeah, I think the whole, when they get sucked into the film reel and then they break out again, that's a good 10 minutes of the episode. And it feels like that's what kind of stops the pace of the episode for me, I think. I think up until that point, it's paced really well. It's a really good, it's not a conventional episode of Doctor Who just by nature of Mr. Ring-a-Ding, but it feels like this is like really solidly put together. And then it goes all meta for 10 minutes, and there's the 2D animated bit when they get more depth by becoming more emotional, which is that's a weird beat, because like, I'm not here to get the low-hanging fruit or whatever, but something like Beauty and the Beast is probably more emotional and has more depth than the Minecraft movie. Just because it's 2D animated doesn't mean, no disrespect to Chicken Jockey, but I like,
that's what was weird to me about that scene. It was like, oh, like obviously, again, like what they're parodying in Scooby Doo. Yeah, you didn't have much emotion in that show at all. It was very, very surface level. Um, but I was kind of hurt as a proponent of like animation is an incredible medium and should be used to tell more stories. That was the show's, or that was at least the Doctor's perspective on animation. It was like, oh, thanks,
Yeah.
mate. Um, yeah, it's an odd one, and Russell has said before that he's like one of his favorite movies of all time was Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's an unintended subtext, but
Very
it's
probably.
but I think the text is the text.
But that's why, again, I was kind of expecting it to kind of continue to evolve through animation styles and show that kind of. Because imagine if they did, then they become more Disneyfied, and then they become more proto CGI even, and go through, or they could try and pull some anime animators in and stuff like that. Go for a real journey through animation as a storytelling tool, tracing down Mr. Ringerding. Imagine Mr. Ringerding and all. I know what I'm pitching now is that that Fairly Odd Parents movie where they go through different TV shows.
Yeah,
But I would be more inclined to think that's the way this episode, conventionally at least, could have gone.
yeah. You could even have done like a stop motion thing as well. That could have been
Yes.
fun.
Oh yeah, get Aardman in to do
Yeah.
like a minute scene.
Well,
of course.
they're doing a Pokemon thing in the near future as well, and they've done Star Wars. So
And they did they did Over the Garden Wall 10th anniversary short thing, which was beautiful.
yeah, like, oh, the Doctor just locks eyes with Feathers McGraw and is like, "I'm coming back for you." Like the god of crime.
I think there was, obviously we had a bunch of trailers before the series started, probably not enough, but there was a couple that were BBC specific, of the Doctor and Belinda appearing in other TV shows.
I was going to ask, did you see the Hey Dougie one?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's animated in that.
So he's animated in that. In fact, he's better animated in that clip than he is in the episode. That's no slight on the animator doing that scene in this episode, because they hit that target. But the Hey Dougie animation is more expressive on purpose, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna parrot something from Five Who fans, Alumni and writer Joel H, because he basically pointed this out. The episode's about cinema and animation, but RTD is so TV brained, he can't help but make it about TV.
Yeah.
And then, because that's what's weird, they're in a cinema screen, they're on film and everything, and then suddenly they're on a TV in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he's so TV brained that he did an adaptation of Shakespeare and made it a TV movie. Like Midsummer Night's Dream. That's where he first met Varada Sethu, who starred in that.
Oh really?
Yeah. So that's the working relationship there. I've actually, I got it on DVD because I need the footage for when I do reviews. And Maxine Peake, Matt Lucas, Bernard Cribbins is in it, I think.
Yeah. Was David Tennant in that one, or?
Oh, the one thing in the UK that David Tennant wasn't in.
Wow.
No, yeah. I'm assuming it was a schedule.
You found it.
It was a schedule issue.
He was too busy with the 5 other things he'd said yes to that week.
But yeah, it's Dreamland animated David Tennant in it. He's cursed. But yeah, so yeah, it's interesting that he's trying to do a cinematic like parallel, but yeah, I agree with that. He's very TV brained, not in an insult. That is just that is the medium he thrives in. Like even reality TV is something that he's self-confessed obsessed with.
Yeah, he watches so much TV and he ingests it, and he knows a lot about audiences and perception and everything. And that was kind of going into this era was like, okay, well, that's kind of what we need right now. And that's again where it's like, okay, according to what I also hear from people is the demographic thing of like, what is it, 5 to 12-year-olds, or it's younger, 5 to 9-year-olds, which is the demographic they're trying to target. They have hit it. They have got that demographic. So it's like, okay, but did it work as mass appeal? Did it work for a streaming show? Disney Plus as a partner in this regard as well is also interesting, because Disney Plus only has like that demographic only makes up for like 5 to 10% of their viewers. The rest of them are millennials plus.
Yeah.
Like that says a lot about the state of Disney as a friend. You know, people complain about woke, whatever nonsense, but Disney has the actual existential problem that Disney has is its core audiences are all growing up, and it's recycling a lot of its classic ideas. You know, that's why we're getting these live action remakes, but it's not bringing in kids anymore.
Yeah.
In the way that it used.
Well, it's why it's about the nostalgia cycles. It's why something like the latest Indiana Jones film can be a big box office bomb, because that's from the 70s and the 80s that like that demographic aren't going to the cinema as much. But then the Minecraft movie is on track to make. I don't know why I've managed to somehow bring up the Minecraft movie twice in this stream.
We're going for 3.
Completely accidental. I've not even seen it yet. I say yet. I have no interest.
No plans.
But yeah, but it's about which demographic have access to credit cards, and that 5 to 10% you've said have somehow stolen their parents' credit cards and they're using it to pay for Disney Plus and watch Doctor Who, which is commitment. I like the commitment.
I mean, if anything, if there was a show that the BBC is involved with that Disney would probably, well, I shouldn't say some stuff about, but Bluey, you know, it is a massive phenomenon, and Disney want it, and I have nothing but respect for Joe Brum and the creative team at Ludo Studios for going no, no, and just turning their back on them. I think that's amazing. But yeah, so sorry, I've gone on so many like tangents.
No, it's fine. It's been a fun discussion. If I may as well, I talk about like Reginald Pye, because I think he's also a bit of a casualty of the format. If this is meant to be a streaming first show, it's on Disney Plus internationally. It premieres in the UK and Ireland on iPlayer first. Why are they not Ireland? Where is it? Northern Ireland?
Only Northern Ireland.
Okay,
I spent the last 5 years in Ireland. I can go on a rant about that.
Okay, I will not. I will not start that diplomatic incident. But so it premieres here on the iPlayer first. So I don't know why they're sticking with a 45-minute format when you've got. I think he's a better character than Sasha 55 from last year. I think I got her name right. I think it was 55. Sasha 55 in Robot Revolution. But Reginald in this one, like, he turns up, they're like, how long does the theme tune last? 1 minute 36, which he'd know that because he's a projectionist. But then all of a sudden, we're on the clock. Let's go into your backstory immediately with these strangers. We have a flash. It felt very mechanical. It felt like we need to endear this character immediately. Let's just go straight for the lost wife. And he's so poorly characterized that he would rather die at the end of the story than have any more depth. So it felt very mechanical. We needed like another 5 minutes, I think, with him. But then we get the 10-minute montage with the meta breaking. What are Lux and what are Reginald doing during that time? It's
they're watching it.
I presume. Well, I think Reginald is. I think that's the implication. He's just there with his. They're both there with their popcorn. He's got like animated popcorn. Reginald's got live action popcorn. They're just having a real fun camp time.
That whole thing. This does also feed back into like Mr. Ringading / Lux as well in an interesting ways. You get that flashback with Reginald and his wife dancing on stage, and it cuts to a shot of Mr. Ringading being like,
yes.
Which then kind of says that he's an antagonist, but he's not so much a villain, which is quite interesting. He's kind of the first god to not be overtly like, I will kill everyone. He's got a heart.
Yeah. Well, we see it during the regeneration bit.
And we see it.
It's a little animated one.
But Mr. Pye, Reginald, again, it is like we could have done with more. He feels, because the idea again was aiming it for that younger audience to give them simpler story. So you have simpler setup, payoff, and all of that. And in an episode about cartoons and whatnot, that can work. Mr. Ringading has the amazing line of dialogue, "I'm two-dimensional, how do you expect me to have backstory?"
Yeah.
Very good. As much as I was just complaining about cartoons can have depth, but like it works for him because of what he represents. Like what it's and it's really interesting as well that there's all of that stuff. We get a little bit of like a heartstring story for Reginald, and then this week's The Doctor Cries at Something was at a Doctor Who fan not being real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mate, just go on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So search Doctor Who on YouTube and see the top results. You will not be you won't be happy with that.
Search the phrase you heard in this episode, R.I.P. Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, like that was fine because it's said by Robin, and I'm just thinking,
Yes.
were you watching the segregation scenes earlier and thinking, God, the good old days? Because because the only people who earnestly use that hashtag are those people.
So, this is like, it's like, because imagine, right, this is again where I have to be careful of my secret good fourth episode brain.
Yeah.
Because it did feed into that to me, which is like, he's using the language of the enemy, you could say that if you wanted to be really dramatic. And that's fine. He's then like, and we now know that the finale, like the 24th, the 24th, the 24th of May is the end of the Doctor Who universe, potentially. Doctor Who's reality. Imagine if the next episode, Mrs. Flood is standing there and she's surrounded by the thumbnails of these Not My Doctor videos. Because they're free to take from YouTube.
Yeah.
And she's like, it was part of my plan all along.
Yeah.
And if you rearrange the letters of Mrs. Flood, you get RTD. Like, I don't know. Again, it's fan brain. It's stupid. But part of me is just like, imagine if that happened, because that would then go stratospheric, I think.
Yeah.
Like ratings-wise. Because all of those people would be furious as well. All of those Not My Doctors would be like, they used my thumbnails in the show.
Yeah.
But then they have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then people would have to check it out, and then the number, I would imagine the number goes. But again, fan brain.
Yeah.
Not 99% sure that's not happening.
Nah.
It's just part of me was like, is that where we're going with this conversation? And it also, poor Robin. Later on, the Doctor's like, do you remember the fans? And he lists.
Yeah, Robin doesn't get mentioned.
Not Robin.
No. Turns out the 15th Doctor is actually really ableist. The first thing that the 15th Doctor did when leaving unit at the end of the giggle was rip out the wheelchair ramp. Like, turns out he's just horrible.
It's a very strange thing to do. To not list all the names of the fans that you were crying over a minute ago.
Yeah.
I know there's 3 of them and it's a bit long-winded, but they made a point that they don't have last names.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what, because I think that's actually something that Russell has commented on before. Like, he'll write a script and they'll only have a first name, and then like marketing or branding will be like, what's the character's last name? And Russell's like, God, I need to think of a last name. Okay.
Well, in a meta twist, that they do get last names in the credits just before they appear.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing happening there. We touched upon like the segregation aspect, right? This current in the episode about, well, it's 1952 Miami.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you should be segregated XYZ. I'm glad the show's kind of discussing it, but at the same time, as a white guy, I don't know if you can tell. As a white guy, I'm also like, this feels like it's kind of mentioning it and then hand waving it. It's a bit better than telling Martha Jones to just walk through the streets of Shakespearean London like she owns the place.
Yeah.
But it still feels a little bit like, it's nice that we have nice characters, and you know, that's great. But also, to the worst thing while that was happening, and you've got the guy behind the bar, and then the conversation with the mum, I was remembering a certain YouTuber complaining about Rosa,
Mhm.
saying not all white folk were racist. And in the back of my head, I was like, this feels like it could be pleasing him and
Okay.
that audience.
Mm.
Obviously, we know that that guy is not going to be happy with anything, and he's going to turn around and say, Mr. Ring-a-Ding was a suppressed white man and some other crazy shit.
Well,
I always
I
remember when
already
he said the
know.
bad.
I already know that
Oh,
he's not happy with this episode because he hates Ian Levine because he liked the episode. Because Ian Levine liked the episode, and
I mean,
now
that's an achievement,
and
but
now
also what?
and now that corner have turned on him because he had a nice thing to say about looks. So that's the current drama, the infighting at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, okay. So now we hate the episode because Ian Levine likes it, right?
Right, gotcha. Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's expand the Love and Monsters connection.
Yeah, exactly. It keeps coming. But yeah, so I again, I feel weird kind of commenting on this stuff. I don't know
On
if it
it,
should be, but
Oh no, I get what you mean. I liked that it was at least acknowledged and mentioned, and
yes,
like
yes,
interestingly with the Rock Hudson connection, I think it's the first time HIV has ever been mentioned in the show. An interesting landmark for it.
yes,
Like because maybe that might have been where Russell's his head was at after doing It's a Sin.
yeah,
But yeah, because it's an interesting thing as well. But once again, going back to Darren Mooney, he was writing about it as well, talking about how maybe Russell's framing the robot revolution with Planet of the Incels and the segregated Miami in the 50s. This is a universe that's explicitly hostile to our first non-white TARDIS team. Which
yeah.
that could be unintended subtext. That could just be like maybe that is intentional. But it seems it's an interesting read on the episode. I'm wondering if it does get expanded in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, if that keeps happening, that would be a really interesting kind of place to take it. So long as he's got something to say with it,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've not mentioned on my notes. I think I've kind of gone.
What do you think of Shooty over? Because I know that he cries a lot, which is a bit. Which we could do a whole essay on that. But I noticed something because I watched it again before going live. When he encounters Lux after the meta breaking bit, before he gets strung up with the film reels, similar to what happened with Ruby for the musical notes in Devil's Chord. He pats his chest twice when like confronting Lux, and he did the same thing with Sutek, and I think that's like a deliberate acting choice from him. Like when he's like making a proclamation, he swears on his hearts or something. I maybe it's just like maybe I'm thinking too much about it, which is very uncharacteristic of me. But maybe it's a deliberate.
Who fans thinking too much about it?
Yeah,
What?
but it could be like a deliberate choice for the character. It's just something I really liked. I think he had his scene with the mother, with Tommy Lee's mother in the diner. That was lovely. And
yeah.
I think his chemistry with Belinda is really strong. I think that by nature of having a much more experienced actor on set, I'm not saying that Millie Gibson's great, she's brilliant, but I think by having Varada Sethu on set, maybe he's upping his game or approaching it differently, because she's slightly older than him, only by a few months. But yeah, I think he's upping his game for this season, and I think it's showing.
I think. Well, I think as well he's probably in the context of filming it. He's feeling more confident in the role, and that good. I still don't feel like I know his Doctor very well, and I do kind of come back to like I have to kind of I think I blame it on the giggle. Weirdly,
Yeah.
him just appearing fully formed. The thing is, at the end of the giggle, he appears fully formed and is brilliant. And I'm like, okay, hit the floor running, and then he kind of falters, and I don't know again if that's because of the writing or behind the scenes stories or whatever it is, but there's something there. And then you get Robot Revolution, and I kind of didn't. I kind of felt a few times like, oh, I just don't like the Doctor at the minute. He's kind of annoying me. And then in this one, from the off, when he pulls himself out from under the TARDIS and is just talking with Belinda all the way for that first 20 minutes, I completely buy him as the Doctor, and I think he's great. And I'm like, oh, I love this incarnation.
Yeah.
I think he's great. And then the meta stuff happens, and that's fine. He still kind of carries through quite well.
He calls Reginald babes, and then it's all downhill. And it's all downhill from there.
Like, and even at the end, like when he's like, we're 60% water and we can still drown. Like, perfect delivery on a Doctor line. Really lovely exchanges with Varada Sethu as well. So yeah, I think he's an amazing actor, and I think he's an incredible get for the Doctor. But at the same time, part of me is like, is he too cool? Which is such a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But is he too cool? And sometimes I feel like we've not had. It also comes down to the time in the episodes because they're running at such a lick. We're not kind of getting enough time to spend with him as the Doctor. We're getting more now than last series. It helps that we've not had 2 episodes in a row where he's just not in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was also a decision. But yeah, I'm still trying to place his Doctor in, like, you know how you've got that mental Rolodex in your head of your favorite Doctors, and like, where does he sit in there?
Yeah.
Mainly of the new Who Doctors. Classic Doctors kind of unfortunately sit in a different part of my brain. So I'm just sitting there going, well, okay, he's not up at like Chris Eccleston levels yet. Where is he? Where does he sit?
Yeah.
He's above Capaldi. He's probably above David Tennant 1, maybe. I don't know. Like it's.
No, yeah, no, I get you completely. I would actually recommend maybe you watch Joy to the World, because there is you probably have already heard, there is a sequence in that where he's not with a companion, but he is like very like alien, and he is very like, okay, what am I doing in this environment for this amount of time? You probably already have known, like, doesn't. I'm dancing around it, but there is like a really good sequence in Joy to the World where like it's essentially a montage, and I feel like that might be something that that you'd really enjoy.
Is that scene just on YouTube? Can I watch that in?
I will actually double check for you, or you could always it's in the first act of Joy to the World, so you don't have to watch all of it.
Okay, because I'm not sitting through another Stephen Moffat Christmas special right now. I'm good.
Completely fair. I'm just looking, and I'm just looking on YouTube. Sorry, my reaction to Joy to the World, called "I Get an Existential Crisis Reacting to the Doctor Who Christmas Special," has more views than the clip from the official channel of the ending scene. Not by a lot, but I think more people enjoyed my existential crisis than the ending of the episode, which is interesting.
I mean,
not
that's interesting. Does that also bode well for the audience kind of following through the show?
Yeah.
On a broader conversation.
Because the YouTube audience isn't that big for it. There's a much larger YouTube market for hate mongering than there is for Doctor Who. We know that much. But like in terms of the show more broadly, I'm not sure, because it has a pretty big presence on Instagram of all places. They do a lot of marketing on Instagram, and that tends to do really well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, I think this episode, I don't know how like the overnights for Lux will be, but I think this one will have an interesting audience number after the 7 days, and if there's any like Disney numbers floating around, because not only is it an episode of Doctor Who, it's an episode that animation fans will be interested in seeing. When they see clips of Mr. Ring-a-Ding, they'll be like, yeah, I want to watch a nicely animated cartoon interacting with real life. Yes, please.
Well, the most viewed episode of the last series, discounting the specials, was 73 Yards. And I think that has to do with the unique appeal of it, and also maybe the reaction to Boom, because Boom had a really strong
Boom had a good word of mouth.
But it's like how you mentioned earlier with RTD being so TV brained. I think Moffat, having come off a stint in the theatre, then does Boom, which is such like you could stage Boom on a theatre stage, and like, yeah. So I think it's interesting seeing where these writers' heads are at based on what they've been writing recently.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I meant to bring that up earlier, but then I completely forgot, and then I saw the episode list of last series, and I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation, because I do think where people are at in their lives and what they've just completed creatively does feed into those next steps. But yeah, for the audience of this, and because it's on Disney Plus worldwide, you know, animation fans who have never watched Doctor Who might come into this. General media fans as well, just like cinephiles and stuff, again, because people love Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Space Jam, not so much Space Jam 2, and even Looney Tunes Back in Action. People love cartoons in the real world. They always tend to, well, it's on Easter weekend, so there's a lot of people around. It feels like an event, and also I think that the show has overplayed its hand when it comes to regeneration, because people used to say that like regeneration episodes, the ratings will always go up because it's an event.
Yeah.
But because regeneration as a concept has been so diluted by the show in the last 15 years, that's kind of ebbed away. But you then do look back and you look at like episodes or changes in the show which the show has never done before. So you look at The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Big change creatively behind the scenes, but also first female Doctor, massive rating. And 73 Yards, not to the same degree, but like quite interesting. The first time an actor comes back to play the Doctor again in The Giggle, also helping, not The Giggle, The Starbeast, but also helps that like there's nostalgia attached, brings in the rating.
Yeah.
So I do think that this episode being very unique in like, this is the first time a cartoon character has been a villain in Doctor Who, and they've got the budget to pull it off, and they have.
Yeah.
Will definitely be bringing in more eyes than the show's had for a while, hopefully.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I want to see what the viewing figures for the new series of Black Mirror are, because that started the same weekend as Doctor Who. I think that was like a statement of intent from Netflix. They waited until the Doctor Who release date, and then they released the Black Mirror one. Because that's like that's standalone individual episodes with their own posters and their own casts and stuff. So I'm curious as to whether or not that has like fluctuating viewing figures based on maybe the premise or the actors involved. Because I know people who have only like, they dip in and out of Black Mirror, they don't binge it, as opposed to like say Adolescence, which is 4 episodes, one long story on Netflix. They basically watch the whole thing if they're interested. Whereas for Black Mirror, they can dip in and out. Doctor Who rests awkwardly in between.
It does.
Yeah,
it's 100% like a. Is this a drama that I can follow from week to week, or is this like Black Mirror and drop in and out? And unfortunately, because the only series that is like that is Series 11.
Yes.
Series 11 and the Chibnall Era in a whole is actually perfectly suited for second screen content in the streaming age. Because everyone walks around and exposits dialogue that is clearly happening on screen. So people who are sitting there playing Fronglets or whatever can just follow along.
Yeah.
That's a tangent. But yeah.
Well, there was the horribly ADR'd line in Lux when Belinda is running to the projector room and sees the sunlight. Oh, he means sunlight. It's like,
he means sunlight, yeah.
Who wrote this? Did Chris Chibnall write this? I know that's a shade, but it did feel like that.
It feels like a kind of, we need to make sure it's clear what is happening here.
Well, it happened in Robot Revolution as well, when the robots are attacking the underground bunker and everyone's like ducking and covering, and then there's a horribly ADR'd line of someone saying, "This is your fault, Belinda," and like, thanks. I think that Verida Sethu's expression and her face of guilt communicated that enough. Thank you.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I've not gone back to rewatch Robot Revolution.
Leave was enough. Yeah, you can leave it a few years. We'll see.
Yeah.
Pair it with Smith and Jones and see how we do.
That would be interesting. But yeah, there is a broad conversation that could, like, I could talk for hours about like Doctor Who's plays in streaming and what it could be doing or should be doing or what I think it should be doing or so and where we are now with this kind of the rumor mill really is interesting because, like, the thing is as well, like for a few weeks there were rumors going around that they've struck the set of the TARDIS. They've taken the set of the TARDIS down.
Yeah.
But then people from the EU visited Wolf Studios and they all got a picture on the set, and it's like, well, no, it's clearly still there.
Yeah.
They didn't just put that up for one picture. But yeah, but it's because they were doing like promotional stuff with Ncuti and Varada, and it was just on a print of the TARDIS. It wasn't actually the TARDIS set. It was like, oh god, is the set gone?
Yeah.
No, it's still there, which means okay, there's certainly hope to try and keep going because that thing's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big piece of ground real estate in Wolf Studios to be taken up by a potentially ended contract.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to say really about it is like, well, if I think the thing that we've got to be aware of is as you keep pointing out, the state of the UK economy and the creative industries and everything. If Doctor Who goes away now, it will be almost impossible to bring it back.
Yeah, like
in this form.
Yeah, like objects in motion tend to stay in motion, if that makes sense. Like,
yes.
Rather, if it grinds to a halt now, it's much harder to restart it, rather than keep the infrastructure and the momentum now.
And I know people will go, well, they did it in 2005. There is a huge difference between the TV and creative landscape in the UK in 2005, 2003, 2004 to now. You know, if you go back and you go, okay, we're going to do Doctor Who again, we're going to do it cheap, we're going to do it in Cardiff, and we're going to build the TARDIS set, do 13 episodes, let's see what we do. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not an easy thing to do at all, hence why we have 8 episodes a year. And, you know, the cost of production, HD cameras, HD special effects, everything's gone through the roof. So, yeah, I am very much of the opinion, like, if it stops to the point where they deconstruct the TARDIS set, it ain't ever going back up.
Yeah.
Or if it does, it will be like that guy was saying the other week, the hostile takeover of the brand by Disney or someone. I don't know if Disney are the right partners. That's another conversation again. Is Disney the right people to have Doctor Who? Should it have gone to Netflix? Should it have gone to Max? Should it have gone to Amazon? I don't know, but like there's a lot to unpack about that stuff. That fascinating.
Yeah, I think because it's interesting when you've got when streaming was really taking up during the pandemic, and it was when these companies kind of found their market and their identity really. Like even Netflix is now interested in live TV and live events. They're doing wrestling and WrestleMania and stuff, and that had such big demand for its first few weeks that it broke their servers and they had to like upgrade because so many people were watching live wrestling on Netflix.
And F1 as well, I think.
Yeah, F1, yeah, because their F1 documentary series, Drive to Survive, that's brilliant. I know that's such like great documentary filmmaking.
Yeah, massive tangent, but like it's kind of insane that F1 has been around for what 60, 70 years or something like. Been around for a while as a thing, but mainly it feels like it's been more or less quite. It's got pockets of fandom around the world, and it seems like Drive to Survive has made it land in America, and now it's big in America, and now it's bigger than ever. It's quite interesting, and it's like that's kind of I think what Doctor Who was hoping to happen.
Yeah.
But instead it happened with the F1.
We live in the different timeline where F1 is still niche, but Doctor Who is bigger than ever.
Yes, that's the one we want to be. Well, for me, like I still subscribe to the idea that Doctor Who would work as a cartoon. I will die on that hill. It's behind me. You know, I'm and I think this episode helps prove that in some ways. And again, it's kind of why I was hoping it would push it further, because then the more you show it in different mediums, you can say, "Oh, look it doesn't have to be live action. We don't have to build $1 million soundstage TARDIS set and XYZ." But yeah.
Well, what's that Simpsons joke where they no longer broadcast animated show lives anymore because it's such a strain on the writer's wrists?
It's such a strain on the animator's wrists, Will. We can't do it.
Well, you can either spend tens of millions on a Doctor Who production, or you just have one animator like making animating it. There we go.
There you go. Just
the economy of scale is there.
we have like I mentioned earlier, we have an incredible heritage of animation in this country. We have incredible animators in this country. We have an incredible couple of animation studios in this country. And the animation industry, talking about the pandemic, like the animation industry got really wrecked pandemic. Just as an aside, like we, as an industry, everything shut down, but animation could continue. So there was a massive influx of cash within 2 years because people, because the industry found its feet, because there were vaccines, and, things got better. Live action came back on the table. All of those animation projects, all of that funding pulled, and animation houses shutting down. Even recently, there was a big one in London that went jellyfish. I know it's a hard time for everyone, and I'm not sitting here going, "Oh, think of us poor little animators," but there have
it's a collective
impacted.
it's a collective impact. It's a collective struggle.
And it's
TV, theatre, animation, it's all impacted. It's the same. It's a very similar ecosystem.
Yes, yeah, it's all part of this beast, and seems to have been like really like theatre. I think we got hit hard like theatre, but like 2 years after, we swapped places with how bad it was for theatre in the pandemic. I have one other observation about the episode, which is completely different to everything else we've talked about.
No, go for it.
There is a very small commentary on getting off your phone.
Okay.
There's the bit where the Doctor and Belinda are going through the frame, and then he says, "We can't keep scrolling up and down. We have to go out."
Yep.
And it's like, for a minute, for that split second, I was like, "Oh, is this now a commentary on like doom scrolling?"
Yeah.
Which is, I've cut that out of my life. I'm so happier for it. I don't know what the heck's going on out there, but I'm happy.
No, you're right. Yeah, going outside rather than scrolling mindlessly. Yeah.
It just felt like, oh, that's an interesting like throwaway of a concept. Just like, and stop scrolling because it's bad. And it's like, you're right, but. Okay, and now the episode's about being meta, so I don't know what was that intentional, or was that just a side effect of the language used?
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think I've exhausted all my notes.
Oh well, I'm glad that none of the notes went to waste or were unspoken. I'm glad we did get through them. My kind of one note left is like during the meta scene they have that like random. I'm not going to say tangent, but it's like when the NYPD officer comes in. I kind of feel like, I rather wish something more interesting was happening in this 2-minute slot. Because I know it's about like the dream within a dream type thing. But I kind of wish that they'd done what you said and it's more different animation styles or they're going through different mediums or something.
I guess that is there to explain how they can get into like a live action situation. But yeah, it's a very odd moment. It's not an odd moment. I appreciate that moment because I also like that the Doctor's attention to detail is like explored quite an interesting way. But again, it kind of feels like, is that rage baiting that section of the audience we've referred to a few times and then going, rug pull, it's actually not what you think it was. Like, is it that?
Yeah.
Is it Russell doing that?
Yeah.
If that's the case, I give it a pass.
Yeah, no, fan Robin is watching that scene going, yeah, go get him, copper, go get him. And then she's flung out of the window by her friends. Anyway, what I wanted to ask you one more thing about next week, because next week is The Well.
Yes.
It's an episode that is co-written. We've got Russell T Davies and also Sharma Angel-Warfel, who's co-writing it. And have you heard the rumor around it?
I heard what you said earlier.
Okay,
was that the first time I heard anything about it?
Okay, well, the rumor is, because Russell T Davies said in like an episode of Unleashed that there's an unexpected sequel this season, and the promo images that they had when they dropped the episode titles indicates that this one could be a sequel to Midnight. And I'm wondering what your thoughts on that might be.
I thought, like when they announced the titles, I remember the well door, and it's got the villain guard symbol.
Okay.
I remember that.
Because the door closes, and on the back
Yeah.
of the wall, as the door's closing, it goes from 11:59 to midnight as the doors as the door's closing.
Okay. Midnight is how I love Midnight. I think Midnight's fantastic. It's up there in the pantheon of episodes where Russell T Davies just decides to pop off. You got Midnight, Waters of Mars, 73 Yards, and what's the second special? The David Tennant special.
Wild Blue Yonder.
Wild Blue Yonder.
I thought you were going to say
Those are the four.
Planet of the Dead.
Planet of the Dead. No, but those are the ones where Russell just kind of popped off and did things that, to me, are just like this. Oh yes, yum, delicious.
Feed it to me.
Feed it to me. So hearing that, I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I would love to see it, but I'm also like, that's easy to screw up, isn't it? Don't give me answers unless those answers make it even more kind of mysterious and more questions and all of that stuff. Like, I'm very curious to know how that's going to be. If that is indeed the case.
If that is indeed like I said, it's just rumor, but it has me running pretty scared because Midnight is like, for me, the peak of the revived series in terms of just a singular episode. It's probably the best. So
it feels like it's like talking earlier about Black Mirror. It feels like an early Black Mirror in a way. Or a Red Mirror, I guess, in that regard. Yeah, that's. I don't know what to think.
Well, I'm aware I've just thrusted this rumor on you now, but yeah, it's an interesting one. If the Doctor and Belinda came into my house through the TV and I told them my favorite episode, it might be Midnight, but it's
I wouldn't be sitting there saying it was Blink. I'd say that.
Yeah, but very unrealistic to have 3 fans agree on the same episode of that was very unrealistic. Like someone in there is going, oh, actually, it's Unicorn and the Wasp. Thank you. That's Robin. We only tolerate her. Anyway, John, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been brilliant chatting with you and getting your animation insights. And I did invite you on because this is the animation episode, but
yes.
it was also an episode where they said, the Doctor Who fandom. I met my best friends through it, and you were a best man at my wedding. So
yes,
that all comes together, and you've been to more weddings since as well. 5 Who fans related. You've been very busy.
Yeah, last year was the year of the weddings.
Yeah,
for me.
you've been hijacking all of these weddings.
yeah. But no, it was good. I'm glad. Thank you for having me on. Because I was sitting there as well, and when I was like, before you messaged me to ask if I'd come on, I was wondering, like, I might have stuff to say about this one. Like, I've kind of walked away a bit from being public fan facing, and now I'm like, if they do this right, or if they do this badly, I'll have stuff to say. Who will listen to me on my Blue Sky at gingeranimated.blueskies?
I'll put a link in the description.
Cheers.
Is there anything that you're working on that you're allowed to say? I know that there are some secret things, but if there's anything, any animation work that you've done that you can promote, or anything you want to talk about, the floor is yours.
Hey, have you seen the Cuphead show? I worked on that. I was an animator on that, which is also it fits in with 1930s style. Bob's Burgers movie, Rick and Morty, lots of things. I'm currently working on a show for CBBC, which will also upset members of the audience, but I think it's kind of lovely, and hopefully will find its home, and people will be proud of it. I hope. Apart from that, I know obviously tomorrow, Will, you're off filming something secret.
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm sure you've heard all about it.
Oh, I've heard all about it. We're all very excited to see how it turns out.
Yes, I guess literally 10 minutes ago, I got a message from someone else involved on it. So yeah, that's happening tomorrow. So yeah,
Yes.
exciting.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Brilliant. John, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your insight as well. Lovely chatting with you as always.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the series.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
Hey,
crossed.
let's just not do Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death again, and we'll be okay.
Yes, we've got a sequel to The Image of Fendal, and that's the finale.
Yeah, but that could be good, actually. I don't know.
I like how
Can you imagine?
you're trepidatious on a sequel to Midnight, but you're like, Image RTD's cooking with Fendal. Let him cook.
Yeah, you let him cook because you could actually make it interesting. Yeah. Anyway.
Brilliant. Right, you have a great rest of your week, John. Thank you so much for chatting.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Will.